Good evening, and thank you for joining us once again for our bi-weekly guided meditation and live stream here at the Blue Lotus Meditation and Mindfulness Center. We are located in central Minnesota, in Brainerd, Minnesota. So if you're in the area and you're looking for a wonderful meditation and mindfulness center, please feel free to come visit us in person. But we always love to have you here as well, our virtual Sangha, our community where we can all get together, practice mindfulness, and honor the Buddha at the same time. Today is November 11th. It is now 6 p.m. here in the central time zone where we are located. Just some brief announcements before we begin our really it's not so intuitive, but a really wonderful program, our Dharma talk tonight on our old loan and our new loan. But some brief announcements. We do have our store on our YouTube channel with many fine products on there, coffee mugs if you like coffee or tea, right? Sandals and footwear and yoga mats and so forth. And know that all of the proceeds go back into supporting the community that we just lovingly serve, as well as we have memberships on that channel as well, if that's something you may be interested in. We also have a book, right? 101 Mindfulness Mantras to Start Your Day. Starting our day with mindfulness and positivity is vital to setting the tone, right? Setting the tone with ourselves and how we view others around us. So 101 mindfulness mantras to start your day may be right for you if you're feeling interested in looking at it. Absolutely. And so we will begin with our 3 jewels where we honor the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma. So I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. So tonight's topic is our old loan and our new loan. And so it's kind of got a cryptic message, right? But what do we think about when we think about a loan? Right? Certainly something financial comes to mind, but that's not what it's not the type of currency we'll be focusing on. And before we begin our Dharma talk, why don't we enjoy a nice, wonderful guided meditation on honoring our parents, right? If you've been around long enough, you know that very often our guided meditations have a direct relationship to our Dharma talk. So let's begin by taking a moment, settle our bodies into a comfortable position, whatever's comfortable for you. And you may want to close your eyes or keep them slightly open with a soft focus, looking downward a few feet in front of you. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. And as you sit there, you're invited to allow a half smile to rest on your face as well. Allow your spine to lift and soften your shoulders. And soften your belly as you continue settling in. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. Go ahead and just allow yourself to breathe naturally. And let's meditate on honoring our parents. We all may come from different backgrounds or different countries. We may even have different religions. We may have a large family, or perhaps we have a small family. But no matter the diversity of our families, we all have one thing in common. We all needed both a mother and a father to begin our lives. And there is no way possible for you to exist without there have been a mother and a father. Parents are our first teachers. And mothers give us our first nutrients to sustain our lives. Mothers give us examples of love, compassion, and empathy. And fathers are also one of our first teachers as well. For they too provide us with examples of love, compassion, and empathy. And when we are small children, they provide for all of our needs. For these selfless actions, we honor our parents. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. And as we grow into the awkwardness of adolescence, we become more independent. We think that we no longer need their guidance. And our parents begin to take a less central place in our lives and being replaced by friends and social activities. And even though parents knew this stage was coming, hearts become saddened as that distance grows. For these selfless actions, we honor our parents. Breathe in. Pause. And breathe out. And as we mature into adulthood, our views have shifted as well. And we find ourselves returning to our parents, not necessarily as providers, but as continued teachers. And throughout all of the trials and tribulations we faced, even if we thought we were alone, we always had our parents. And for these selfless actions, we honor our parents. Go ahead and begin to open your eyes and reorientate yourselves before you move around, before you stand up. So often we, especially when we're younger, right? Especially when we're in our teens and experiencing the awkwardness of adolescence and so forth, we don't often value our parents as much. Perhaps they get in the way, right? We ruin the fun, right, of growing up sometimes because we're careful. We want our children to be careful and safe. And that's part of the new loan. Right? So when we talk about our old loan and our new loan, we can be both of those. We can be included in both of that, both of those considerations. You know, so we certainly all have parents. So we certainly all have, at one point in time, right? Maybe both of our parents. My father has passed away, so I only have my mother left. And so, but I'm a part of her own old loan, or she's part of my old loan, right? And with our parents, our perceptions of them changes as we begin to age, right? So when we are a child, think about how we viewed our parents, right? We needed them, right, as our primary provider for food, for shelter, for clothing, for safety. And everybody's family's dynamic may be a little bit different, but, those are the responsibilities of our parents, right? And that was also them being an initial teacher for us. It's where we learned compassion or empathy, love, sacrifice, right? Very often that parents will do without so that the children can have. So we don't realize that as children, right? When we're young, we don't realize what's going on. We're just interested in doing childish things, right? Playing games, hanging out with school friends or whatnot at those certain ages. And our parents also took up a central focus, right? We didn't have much of a huge outside influence, right? We didn't go to school, we weren't in elementary or middle school or high school or anything like that. So our circle of our central focus was basically with our parents and siblings and maybe grandparents and so forth. But what's interesting is when we were younger, our parents were infallible. I mean, we listened to exactly what they said. There could be no mistake, right? Whatever they said, that was the truth, right? And so that's part of that old loan, right? Hasn't come to maturity yet, because we'll find out as we got older, our understandings change, our perceptions change, right? So when we hit our adolescence, right, our teenage years, we certainly become more independent, right? Our parents are still teachers, but now we start learning a little bit more ways of our community, right? From our friends, from school, other outside interactions, right? And our parents no longer become that central focus. Still providing for us though, right? Still probably, you know, providing you with clothing and certainly for food and shelter and so forth. But we're no longer under that spell sometimes. Sometimes that can be sad though, right? Realizing that, not everything is the way that we perceived it when we were a child. We had a certain viewpoint. Now we're at adolescence. Still not quite to maturity yet, but our horizons, our visions have broadened so much. And we begin to see them as infallible. Perhaps you hear one of your parents cursing, right? Maybe you never noticed it before, right? Or maybe you witness an argument or something between your parents. Maybe they just make a mistake, right? Whatever it is. So our perception of them, has been altered. So that's part of that old loan, right? That part of that obligation has been called in. Our perception has changed. It's not necessarily a bad or a good thing. It just is. And then we get into adulthood, right? Adulthood. And here our relationship matures, right? Especially once we get into our 20s and so forth, and certainly older, because now we have such a much broader understanding of what it takes to be a parent, the responsibilities that they bore, as well as providing us with that love and compassion and empathy. And we see their wisdom and we recognize the value of that relationship. We don't necessarily value it in the same sense, when we're 4 and 5 years old, right? We certainly don't value or recognize that type of a relationship when we're in our teens, right? When you're in your teens, your door is shut, you're hanging out with your friends, doing whatever, right? How often have you thought about, wow, I wish you could, go back and just be more mindful with your parents during those times, knowing that, sometimes your feelings get hurt. When you go out on a Friday night or Saturday with your friends, you're no longer hanging out with mom and dad and, eating food, watching a movie, or doing whatever it is. So that part of that loan has been called in. Now, as you mature, you will get into relationships, and perhaps, right? Perhaps you will have children. So the new loan may not necessarily apply to you just yet, if you're listening to us tonight. But, and that's a personal decision for you to make. And everybody's path is on the right path. So, but our new loan is children, right? And so think about when we have children now those tables are flipped a little bit, right? In childhood, we are happy to provide and to teach our children, to be their first teachers, right? That new baby smell, right? If you've ever smelled that before, a new baby smell. But also this is where some of that suffering can kind of start, right? Because very often when we have children, we have long-term expectations for them, right? And when we have expectations, sometimes when we have that, when they're not met, we get a little upset sometimes, right? Maybe they're going to be you have goals for them, going to be an engineer, scientist, a teacher, whatever it is. So when we have those long-term expectations for our children, it's the beginning of suffering or some disillusionment, because we very often don't really understand that they're their own sentient being and they will find their own way. So that's why it's important for us to nurture them with love and compassion and empathy so that they can perhaps not follow through on our expectations for them, but follow their own path for joy. Right? But no matter what they do, even especially as children, we're always delighted in the joy that they bring. Imagine spilling chocolate sauce all over the carpet. Yeah, you may get a little bit mad now, right? But those are the kind of memories that I remember those days. When you spilled chocolate sauce all over the carpet, couldn't get it out, right? So that's part of the new loan, right? Little memories like that. And then again, as our child, right, perhaps, matures into adolescence, again, what are we going to find? Same thing that you did, increased independence. And we're still very happy with them, right? But we begin to experience a little bit more sadness, right, as they move away from us. And again, towards friends and peers and other social environments. That part of that loan is being called in. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it goes. It's part of that contract. Guess what's next, right? The adulthood. Right? When they get into adulthood. And we may have come to the conclusion, at this point that, they're really their own individual. Maybe they don't want to be, a scientist or an engineer. Maybe they want to be an accountant, a cook, right? A truck driver. It doesn't matter whatever they do, because remembering that you have instilled in them love, compassion, and empathy towards all beings, and that following their own path, right, is a joy, right? It's a joy. It's a joyful experience because you've taught them well. And they don't have to be just like you. Remember, everybody is on their own journey at their own pace, and that they are right where they're supposed to be, even if it is hard times sometimes. Right? But no matter what's going on, we're still happy to provide, right, love and guidance. Right? We're still having the skill that we need to step back sometimes, right, and not interfere too much in their relationships. Right? Because sometimes our love and care for our own children can be a little bit overbearing, especially if they're married and they have their own children and their own families and so forth. And so knowing when, as an adult, as a parent, stepping back from our children's relationships, it doesn't mean that, we don't love them. It doesn't mean that we don't care for them or concerned for their well-being. But just like when perhaps maybe you had an in-law who liked to jump in a little bit more, and maybe you bit your tongue a little bit, but what were you thinking? Right? You're talking too much. Step back. It happens, right? It's all done out of love. It really is, right? Because we always want the best for those that we love. So we have to remember that as well. right? But sometimes it can cause a little bit of strife, a little bit of friction, a little bit of resentment sometimes. So, and then just really understanding that our love for them will never stop. Doesn't matter what they do. And so that part of that new loan has been called in. Because the time that we get in all of those stages of lives, of their lives or even of our lives, are fleeting. They're temporary. They are impermanent. So practicing mindfulness allows us, especially in the older years, right? We can really begin in adolescence with a skillful mindfulness practice. We can begin in adolescence to understand and to appreciate where we are in that relationship stage with our parents or with our children. But the fact that you're here listening, watching tonight, wanting to nurture that aspect with yourself so that you can have a better relationship with perhaps your parents or your children is a wonderful testament to your well-being and for theirs as well. So all loans come due. Well, we will not in 2 weeks have a live Dharma talk simply because of the holidays and I have some travel and some family coming over and so forth. So our next Dharma talk to keep on the bi-weekly schedule though is on December 9th. And we'll focus, that Dharma talk will be on developing our own mindful intelligence. So often we find that we get overwhelmed by our emotions, by the immediacy of, or what we perceive as the immediacy of certain situations, right? Projecting well into the future, maybe a negative outcome when we don't even know. So December 9th, right, which will be a Monday at 6 p.m. still, developing your mindful intelligence, but certainly stay tuned to our channel because in our YouTube, we're on YouTube. Stay tuned to our Instagram as well or Facebook because there'll always be posts, shorts and reels and so forth of mindful activities and ideas and concepts that we can use to develop and nurture our own well-being as well. So we'll conclude tonight's meeting with our Sangha meeting with the 3 jewels. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Sathu, Sathu, Sathu. With that, my friends, I wish you all many blessings, joy, and happiness. And if you ever have questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us, right? Always being on your side is really what we're happy. It brings us joy as well. Nurturing your your well-being and your development as well. So if you ever have any questions or concerns, feel free to just reach out to us. Always delighted to hear from you. With that, my friends, many blessings. And we'll see you on December 9th.